Watch and or listen while we tackle tough and sometimes taboo topics filmed live over drinks. This platform allows us to articulate our thoughts and challenge our beliefs. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy. All right, this is SipTalk podcast episode 272. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined by James, the Boswell, philosopher, philanthropist, philatelist, phlebotomist, a man full of phlegm. How's it hanging down there in sunny South Carolina, James?
I really wanted to get a bike ride in today, and all it did was thunderstorm all day long.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I've been upping my my foot miles running, and some days I've been planning big, long runs, and I just got rained out. But it's the time of year for rain. So, anything else going on down there?
Nope.
Let me ask you a question: are these thunderstorms going to affect your internet stability?
They better not.
So, for those of you who didn't tune in last week, this is take two at disasters that could ruin humanity, including internet shutdown. And last week, as we talked about internet and electricity going down, my internet kept going out, and just oddly, also there was a flickering light, in the basically right on my face. So it was not a fun time, and ultimately we cut the podcast short because I had no internet, and I was really frustrated last week, James. I was like, wanted to put my fist through the wall, kind of mad, just because I had this tool at my disposal that wasn't working the way I needed it to. And, we spent at least an hour trying to restart the router, restart the computer, diagnose the problem, and we didn't get anywhere.
Yeah, it was uncastable because you were a slideshow at best.
Yeah.
And now you're at medium bandwidth.
Well, I believe I'm hardwired in, and I had to play with the system settings to get the hardwire kind of a priority level above the Wi-Fi. But it's the new setup, and this wire is literally, I need like a 20-foot wire, and this is a 10-foot wire, which is just kind of like at a diagonal from the desk into the closet here. So, hopefully nobody trips over it in the middle of the cast, and we can commence with our, you got slow onset disasters. We just got all types of disasters we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted when you came up with the idea of all right, how bad would it be if the internet just went completely out or power went completely out? I was like, you know what? Let's think about this a little bit more and talk, because those are only two things to talk about for an hour. Let's add in a couple others of disasters that maybe you haven't thought of or heard of, but could end up being a huge problem if they're not addressed.
Yeah, well, let's get into the internet and electricity, because I think we get through that pretty quick, considering we half already had that conversation.
Yeah, but we should just start fresh.
But in the sense of starting fresh, I will mention that I did get I had a pretty rough electrocution incident a couple weeks ago when I was gardening, which had me thinking about electricity, and I happened to dig up some old walkie-talkies, which had me thinking about cell phone connectivity and internet. And I was just thinking, I saw the walkie-talkies initially, and I was like, oh, these are garbage. But then I had this this just kind of feeling of oh, yeah, but it would be cool to play with, And I was like, I'm not throwing them away. And I play with them a little bit around the house, but I don't know. There's not much to do with walkie-talkies, unless, of course, cell phone towers are down. Outside of that, I can't really think of much use. Can you think of any? Because remember, I think at max they have a 2-mile range.
Yeah, which is not very far, but back when I refereed soccer professionally, using radios for the games was really common. So I probably use walkie-talkies more in the last 10 years than 98% of the people you know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody who. I'm thinking of somebody who works at Foot Locker or something, or a little.
Well, yeah, retail.
Yeah, retail, but outside of that, so let's just get into it. The internet goes down. Okay, so imagine we're obviously not on a live chat. The internet goes down, and
If the internet goes down and I'm on a live chat, I'm going to stare at the camera like an idiot for 5 minutes.
It's basically what happened last week.
Right.
So my question to you is this is a personal question to you. How quickly would you notice if the internet went down?
Assuming I'm not sleeping,
Yeah.
probably anywhere between 2 and 30 seconds.
How many hours a day of, let's say you're awake for uh, 18 hours a day. How many hours do you sleep at night?
More than 6. I probably somewhere between 8 and 9 is my average.
Oh, I get about 7. Okay, so let's say you're awake for 16 hours a day.
Okay.
How many of those hours are you on a connected screen?
Probably 13 to 14 of them.
I'm pretty close. So you think you're noticing almost instantaneously that your internet's down?
Yeah, because when if I'm not playing pool and I'm not cycling and I'm not napping, all the rest of my time, my free time, I'm spending on a computer doing some kind of game or whatever. So, like, let's assume on a normal day, like I've got tomorrow off, right? So I'll probably do like an hour bike ride, and let's say like 15 minutes to clean up and everything after that, and then maybe I play pool by myself for like 45 minutes. So let's call that 2 hours. And if I'm awake for 16, then that's 14 hours that I'm in front of the computer playing a video game, watching a video, whatever. So if the internet goes down and I'm not out on a bike ride, then I'm going to know immediately.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, look, let's say I stream a lot of video, and then most of my day at work is sat in front of the computer, emailing, messaging people. But let's say I'm away from the computer, I'm driving in. I'm usually streaming EQX, the radio station, WEQX out of Vermont, which is internet because it's not actually on the regular radio down here.
Won't reach.
Or YouTube. So that's internet. So internet goes down. I'm just going to think something's probably going on my phone. I'll be driving, so I'll flip to regular radio, and then I'll get to the train station, and that's where I'll realize there are some major issues. And when we're talking about internet, we're just not talking about you not being able to use Instagram. We're talking about the New Jersey Transit is probably coming to a screeching halt the second the internet goes down. I imagine, maybe not instantaneously, because I don't think a lot of their systems work on internet. But
their payment systems sure do.
But I would imagine that as soon as they kind of realize that there's kind of this regional or semi-global, I don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but we'll call it regional outage of internet, they're probably coming to a halt, and they're like wondering what's going on, which means that train travel in and out of the city is probably shutting off. What are some other immediate things that you can think of for the internet being down?
Well, it depends. I'm pretty sure that cell phone networks piggyback on the internet. Like they're like if the internet goes down, then cell phone networks are probably also going down. So
you're not going to be able to make a cell phone call. You're certainly not going to be able to use your maps or your
anything mobile data related is not going to work. But let's also assume that the cell phone network's down. Let's make this fun.
Yeah, well, and then I think it gets really weird because your TV is connected to the internet. Nobody has analog radios anymore.
I do.
So do I. But
my car has an analog radio. I can start up my car and listen to the radio.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that my phone has my phone has a radio. So like if I needed to,
your phone?
I think so. I think I could listen to FM radio on my phone without having to use like data.
Oh, well, I certainly can't do that on an iPhone. I know that.
I do have other devices that can like do radio straight up, but also I could just turn on my car and listen to the radio.
Okay, so let's say you have no connection with the outside world. How soon are you leaving your house to go like knock on a neighbor's door or something? Because you don't have a landline phone.
No, I don't.
So you have no communication with the outside world. You can talk to your roommates and be like, "Hey, you're having this problem. How long are you sitting there just waiting?" Because you don't have TV, you don't have internet.
I mean, if I probably would try and tune into a radio. Actually, I would probably try and get onto like NPR.
Before you would go to your neighbor's
and see if there's any breaking news. Yeah, like before I talk to anybody else. Like talking to another person is That's a true emergency. If I'm talking to somebody I don't really know.
All right. So look. So uh, I think I would probably scrape together to find a radio first too. Now, how does this play out over the next week? Do you think? So let's
Well,
the internet's down permanently.
let's assume that the internet and cell phone are down simultaneously and for a prolonged period of time. Like the world basically comes to a screeching halt.
There's no like credit card payments. Every store basically these days uses an iPad checkout system.
Yeah, but even the stores that don't, like all the credit card stuff is going to be transmitted by web. Like when I worked in a hotel, like my job was to send in the batch every single night, and that was done on a web portal. And like, yeah, we scanned the cards into the computer, they'd authorize through the computer, and then we would batch them out at the end of the night. Like the days of using telephone lines for credit cards are long gone.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of what is intriguing about this conversation, about this topic, is that so much of our infrastructure is built on cell service and internet and Wi-Fi. That without that, so much shuts down.
I think you would find businesses pivoting very quickly to receiving cash only.
Well, think about how an ATM works. How are people getting their cash out of the bank? And then how do banking systems work so that at the bank they even know how much money you have in your account? If you didn't go to an ATM, you actually went to the bank and you're like, all right, I want 10 grand in cash. Can I have it? Like, we don't know how much money you have. Number?
Yeah.
You're like, let me look it up on my phone. Oh, wait a second. I have no idea what my 12-digit account number is.
Well, yeah.
I mean, go check my paper statement that I don't get anymore.
Well, you can find if you have checks, you can find your account number.
Well, if you have, yeah, which I have several bank accounts that I don't have checks for.
But finding your account number without the internet is not as hard as you think. But
well, you have to
if you were to go to the bank,
but most of my statements don't have.
Yeah, but
paper.
If you were to go to a bank, like the banks would have to go back to paper ledgers. Which I don't think they would really be able to do. They would be able to do eventually, but it would probably take them a couple weeks to adapt. So you would be without banking for, I'd say, at least 2 weeks.
I think businesses like grocery stores and cafes and things like that, and same thing with banks, except it's a little more complex with banks because they're holding all of your money. But a lot of these companies would just basically switch to pen and paper method very quickly, very early on, just to keep track and keep some type of ledger. But
I can see a lot of businesses going to a paper ledger and IOUs.
But the thing is, the longer you do that without having a system you can convert it to, it's a very slow process, paper and pen, and then you've got all this data, and where are you storing it?
Well, I mean, if you can get the banking system switched over to paper ledgers that works, even if it's slow, and people can take out money, like, first of all, the federal government's still going to be insuring all these accounts. So, like, let's say you've got $100,000 in the bank and you need to withdraw $20,000 that you can pay rent and pay for food and stuff like that, right? Because now you have to pay for everything in cash.
Yeah.
So you could, like, yes, this would lead to a run on banks because they'd have tons of people withdrawing tons of cash, but that's all insured by the federal government. So there wouldn't be like an immediate danger to the financial sector besides the fact that it would be much slower and more inefficient. But banks would be, I'm sure that banks have contingency plans in place for something like this. I would be surprised if it weren't regulated that they needed to have some kind of a plan for how to switch to an all paper system if their IT systems go down. Because imagine if a bank gets like, imagine if an individual bank suffers a cyber attack where all their IT.
Well, that's where I was going to go next. But I wanted to, just before we get too far away from paper records, I wanted to just remind you of this story that happened in high school when, I don't know if you were part of this project or not, but we had the wrestling coach had bought a restaurant and we were doing work for him. Basically, the restaurant was like an 80 or 100-year-old place that had just all this kind of garbage and junk that had just accumulated. And it's one of those restaurants that like slowly went out of business over the course of a couple of decades. And then he bought this place and he hired some guys from the wrestling team to basically clear it out. And in the basement, do you know where I'm going with the story? Do you remember?
No, I remember like working in that restaurant a little bit, like doing some of the tasks that you guys are doing, but that was kind of towards the end of my time doing that kind of
Well,
work.
look, so in the basement, there were boxes and boxes and boxes of paper receipts. And paper over time, remember, my guess is we're like on the low end, we'd be looking at like 50 years. I don't know. I don't remember. This is a long time ago. But there was so many boxes. There was several truckloads packed to the absolute brim that were not tied down very well that we took to the dump of just all of these receipt paper. So I took all this receipt, a bunch of trips back and forth. And then going home later that night, it was raining and I had come around this very sharp turn. Do you remember that sharp turn on it's not Farm to Market Road,
McChesney Extension.
McChesney Road, something like that.
McChesney Extension.
Very sharp, 90-degree turn or so.
There's two of them.
And as I came up on this turn, there must have been a like afternoon thunderstorm or something, or early evening thunderstorm. I'm driving home, and I'm like, oh my god, it snowed on the road, and there was this slurry of 3 or 4 inch just white everywhere, these clumps, and just it looked like
a couple of the boxes fell off the truck.
A bunch of the boxes had fallen off the truck, and then it poured and rained, and there was just this slurry of kind of paper sludge all across the street, lots and lots of it, and I hit it and spun out in the 360 and crashed into a ditch, and then I blew the front bumper. Like shock for the front bumper, and I was broke at the time, but that was a big expense for me. So you don't remember? You remember that story?
I wasn't there for it.
But you heard the story.
Maybe.
So you don't remember it?
It was like 20 years ago. So
and
stories of you crashing your car back then were pretty common. So
yeah, there was one big crash. That was all. And a lot of other dumb shit done in cars. Where are we going from here? We're talking about should we segment to electric off, or should we go into the kind of
let's just do the electricity, like the whole power grid fails, because that's going to be the internet's out and then much worse.
Yeah. So, well, obviously power goes out. Do you have a battery radio, wind up radio?
No, I've got a car.
So you get radio in the car, but you couldn't plug your radio on inside the house. I don't have a wind-up radio. One of my old radios might take batteries.
I've got an AC/DC converter that plugs into my car, so I could take my radio out of my house and then plug it into my car and listen to 2 radio stations.
2 radios at once. That would be that in surround sound on top of surround sound. So, but I mean, with electricity down, I was just thinking like. You would go to a gas station, and the gas stations, the pump is run on electricity.
Yep.
So the gas station would have to have a gas engine to power the electricity to pump the gas.
Which they probably don't have, but I bet a few do.
Well, they'd have to go if they wanted to keep selling gas, which people would be getting around.
Yeah, so they might go out and buy one to run the electric pumps that power it.
You know who wins in this scenario is, and maybe not totally, but people who have solar panels.
I was going to say just like preppers in general.
Yeah, like so if you have walkie-talkies like I do, you got loads of batteries. I got a decent amount of batteries, flashlights, candles. Do you keep those things in the house?
I've got flashlights and candles.
And then
not a ton of batteries.
So I think again, you'd still be able to go to the grocery store and get non-perishables.
Perishables will last at best a day.
Anything that needs refrigeration, I mean, you can still have the stuff that doesn't require refrigeration, unless of course it's summertime and that grocery store is 110 degrees inside because there's no electricity. Then everything's going.
Anything that's not like canned or dry is going to be bad in a day or much less.
Yeah. Now, points to anybody who has a home garden or does any homesteading. Those guys are winning big time in this scenario. But I think how catastrophic do you think internet and electric going out is for the everyman?
Losing electricity would lead to hundreds of thousands of deaths in the first 2 or 3 days.
Well, anybody who's sick in the hospital who needs any type of support is dead very quickly.
Yep.
People trapped in elevators, that would be a big one.
Think
People on,
about
go ahead.
like all the traffic crashes.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, people just driving like idiots because they already do without
Those signals.
without traffic lights and things like that. I'm thinking of people that live in high buildings that are just kind of screwed because
Yeah, anyone elderly that lives on like the 10th floor or higher is screwed.
yeah, like you can leave your house and never come back is basically what that means, and you got to go down loads of stairs. Um, what else am I missing here? Electric. Uh, I wonder, do you think New York City would cool off? So if you walk out in the street, it says 90 degrees outside in New York City, and you're somewhere in Midtown. It's like 105 degrees on the street.
The temperature in buildings would be higher. The temperature outside would be lower.
Yeah, that's kind of what I would think.
Because you've got all these buildings that are running AC, the heat's being pumped out into the streets. All the energy that's being used in the subway and all the steam heating and stuff like that that's in buildings, all that waste energy gets dumped into the streets.
But the buildings continue to act like greenhouses.
Yeah, so like during the summer, I remember like your apartment.
In Astoria, yeah.
Yeah, where it was 95 or so outside, which was unpleasant enough, but inside your apartment was probably 105 to 110. And I remember like just chilling, not chilling, hanging out at your place, and I laid it like on your couch, like with a sheet under me, wearing just my boxers, and I took a nap, and it just looked like I wet the bed, which I effectively did.
Yeah, yeah. That I remember that just being so freaking hot. That apartment. That was an old building, old co-op building in the
It was
story.
like the fourth floor, all brick.
Man, that was
So the brick would heat up and then just radiate the heat back inside.
like a brick oven. Yeah, designed
Yeah.
to like hold the heat, which it certainly did.
Yeah, it did.
What else are we missing here? So like near to short term, you got solar. People are going to have solar generators. That would be helpful.
You know, without electricity, you'd see a massive spike in crime for the short term.
That does not surprise me whatsoever.
Because one, the opportunity to commit crime is going to be much higher, and the capability to fight crime is going to be much lower.
Yeah. I guess I wonder. Do you think crime like on businesses? Or you think crime on like house break-ins, or you think just
Mostly looting.
I would think looting first also, but I would want.
I think individual houses would be far less victimized than businesses, because one,
it would be a good case.
more shits in businesses, and it's much lower risk because at least in South Carolina, like there's a good chance that if you break into a house, like the person that owns that house has a gun.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. That would be the case where I would want to be a gun owner. Is in a situation like that. Like
one of the only times I've ever thought that I would have liked to have had a gun was like the day after a hurricane, just in case somebody wants to do something stupid. It's just like to because that would be the only time that I've ever felt like there might be a chance that somebody would try and like rob my apartment or my house.
I'm gonna guess power was out.
Oh yeah, power was out and the city was just absolute chaos, and the police weren't doing anything because they couldn't get anywhere because all the roads were closed, and a lot of the police evacuated, so they had minimal presence in the town because the whole town was under mandatory evacuation, and the police even said like, if you get into trouble, we will not come and help you.
Well, so
because you should have left.
That's another thing I think that would happen in like maybe depending on how long this goes on for. And remember, getting the news to the people is going to be really tough because it's not like you can put it on Twitter, right? You can't put it on the town.
Can't even put it on radio.
What's that?
Can't even put it on radio.
You wouldn't be able to put it on the radio. There's no electricity. And you couldn't print it in newspapers because there's no electricity to run the newspapers. So it would be.
Yeah, I would say you could kind of look to Spain as like the best case scenario for what happens if the power goes out, because basically the entire Iberian Peninsula lost power for like about 12 hours a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
and you can look at like the videos that people took of their cell phones of what was going on, and almost all of them are just like people hanging out together in the street, and like people covering each other's tabs if like somebody doesn't have cash, like somebody's like, yeah, I got you, I'll pay for the bar tab with cash or whatever, and like people just like playing guitar and dancing in the streets or hanging out at bars and stuff. Like there was virtually no crime or chaos. It was just everybody kind of be like, oh, like we don't have to work, and we like we can just
Part of this topic is me like kind of living out this idea of like I don't have to be connected. I don't have to have a cell phone on me anymore. Like it would actually just be a big relief. The only problem would be the income, right? And then I think I would be very quick to be able to like. I mean, I live in the suburbs now, so I could work on like planting a garden, getting some chickens. Like I would be very quick to be like, oh, this looks like it's going on. And I called coronavirus early on. They're like, yeah, we're going to shut down for 2 weeks. And I'm like, guys, that's the most.
It's not going to be 2 weeks.
It's not like I can tell you right now, it's going to be 30 days. And I was betting money on. I was like, are you taking the over under on June 1? And I'm like, I'm taking the over. I think.
Did anybody pay out on that?
No. And man, I was not a pleasant person to be around during those days. All right, where and just
so I would say that both of those are fat, like because I came up with a couple like slow onset disasters, where like they kind of take a while to get going, but once they're started, they can actually be really bad. I would say losing all internet or losing all power, like those would be fast onset disasters. Those would be a problem starting at about minute 5.
Well, there'd be a lot of, but like you said, millions of people would die almost. I mean, depending on how big of an outage it is. But if it's like worldwide or something,
Imagine it's the entire United States loses power. You got 330 million people here. I would bet within a month you'd have at least 1 million dead.
yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, I mean, imagine the hospitals, man. I'm not even talking about like old people on life support. I'm talking about like babies being born. Like there's so many different aspects that the power out, power being out would affect.
Well, it also like let's just imagine that hospitals like can do a lot of the basic stuff without power, right? In terms of like bandaging wounds and stuff like that. They're going to run out of supplies real fast.
Well, getting the supply chain is going to come to a screeching halt as well. And I would
like,
guess
even the stuff they can do without electricity, yeah, they're going to run out of supplies in like a week.
I was going to say I'll bet you that stuff kind of refreshes on a weekly basis. Food in hospitals and all the kind of PPE and I mean I watch in hospitals every room somebody goes in, they like either sanitize their hands or take on or off gloves and a mask, leave the room, come into a different room and do it all over again so they don't cross contaminate.
But just think about something like this. Like, let's imagine you've got a broken arm, right? Like, sure, having an X-ray would help so they can know exactly what's wrong. But like, if they don't have the X-rays and they can see that it's broken, they can still cast it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can still do more than nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you don't have the plaster and you don't have the bandaging, like you're not going to be able to do anything.
Well, imagine you have a severe stomach ache and come to find out like your spleen is rupturing, right? Like then you just die.
Yep.
Like they're either gonna cut you in the middle, right down the center, and be like, all right, we're gonna take a really good look around here. They're certainly not gonna do that like micro minimally invasive surgery.
Well, yeah, because anesthesia becomes a lot more difficult without being able to electronically monitor vitals. Like you could still perform surgery without electricity, but it's going to be a lot rougher of a process.
We're literally going back 100 years.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about some slower onset.
Well, I want to talk about one other fast onset disaster, and this one's along the lines of everything losing power. But are you familiar with the Carrington event?
I just read about it, and I was surprised to know that they were even able to like sense and measure to a degree what had happened. But I'll let you.
Well, so the Carrington event was a massive solar flare that hit the United States, and I think it was 1859. So there was already a small amount of electrical infrastructure in the country, like telegraph lines and stuff, and the 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 magnetic flux on the Earth was so strong that like all the circuits that were wired were able to generate current on their own. Like people were reporting being able to send like Morse code messages like way farther than they ever could, or like they could unplug their Morse code machines from the power source and still send messages because the magnetic fields in the earth were going so crazy that they were generating current in anything that was wired. Now, if that same event were to happen today, first, it would knock out all the power. So we'd have the whole problem of like the power grid going down,
Exactly.
like we just talked about. But also because it would be generating so much current in all of like anything that's beyond like a microprocessor.
I'm thinking fire.
Yeah, you're going to have fires everywhere. So like let's imagine that the power grid went out just for some fluke or whatever. Like you're not going to really have damaged infrastructure. You're just going to have to figure out what went wrong. With the Carrington event, you're going to have melted infrastructure everywhere.
Yeah, which would be huge amount of rebuilding. Um, so I read that there's a like 1 to 2% chance every decade that something like this could happen.
Yep.
And it has
It's
not
all
happened.
about like how big is the solar flare and where is it pointed.
And exactly, there's lots of solar flares, but they have to be pointed towards the Earth.
Yeah, and thankfully we're a relatively small target.
Yeah, I mean relatively, but not improbable.
No, it's happened before, documented.
Exactly, and that was a while ago. So it sounds like we might be due for another one. If it's 1 to 2% chance every decade, um, our chances are increasing.
Oh, speaking of, you know what? This isn't on the list, but I want to talk about because I heard about it on the radio last night, and I think it was cool. So, do you know that the magnetic poles on the planet are not stationary?
I am aware.
And so it's a somewhat random process, but they can move like great distances. And like about 41,000 years ago, magnetic north on the planet was centered over like northern Africa.
Oh, no shit. Interesting.
And when this happened, when the poles kind of reverse,
Mm-hmm.
like the magnetic field also greatly weakens. So like Earth's magnetic field during that time was like 90% less strong. So if you were to have like a sudden like magnetic pole reversal, all of a sudden like all this solar radiation and cosmic radiation is going to come through like 10 times more. So like skin cancers, sunburns, all that kind of
Oh,
stuff is
shit.
going to be, and that's the bad part. The good part is that you get to see like the aurora borealis everywhere.
That's what I read about this. The Carrington event was that you could see these crazy colors in the sky, which sounded pretty cool. Um, what was I going to say about this magnetic field? Damn, I lost my train of thought on this one. Um, all right, well we can move on to the next. Damn, I thought I had something interesting to say. Clearly not interesting enough. What do we have after the Carrington? Similar to the Carrington event.
I mean
What
that's
I was going to say, I know what I was going to say. On top of magnetic fields, compass is not working, right?
well, yeah.
In this
Compasses,
scenario,
no, they'll still work.
well, it's going to point that you don't know where it's pointing. What I was going to say is that GPS is obviously out. Especially
Not with the magnetic field. The GPS doesn't
no,
work on magnetic
no,
fields.
I'm not. I'm two different things. What I'm saying is if there's a Carrington effect type solar flare, that's taking out satellites.
Oh
Okay?
yeah, it's frying all the
But
satellites.
also, let's say even if you don't have electricity, whether you don't have electricity or you don't have GPS, you don't have the capability to navigate around unless you know your way around, which I found surprisingly, most people don't have any idea how to get anywhere unless their GPS is on these days.
That's always weird to me when I'm like, you've lived in this town for 10 years. Why are you using GPS? Like,
Yeah,
you're
I'm
making the drive that you've made 20 times before.
so I know upstate New York, the town, the area that we grew up in, like the back of my hand. I have forgotten it so much, and then when I'm up there still, like I don't, it doesn't feel like I know what I'm doing, but I've just got like this sixth sense to like get where I need to be. Now Manhattan, I know like the back of my hand, I can get anywhere. I could name any street. Now where I am in the suburbs, I'm still learning, but I oftentimes I'm looking at a map, and like I'll go for a run, I'll come back and look at a map, or I'll look at the map and go for a run. Um, but I also, when I do GPS, I keep north. I keep the map static. So north is always at the top of the map. So if I'm going south, I'm going down on the map. Now, if you, and I'm not talking to you, James, I'm talking to our one viewer here. If you use GPS, my question to you is: are you ever going sideways or down, left, right on the map, or are you always going up? Because if you're always going up, that means that the landscape is turning around where you are, and you'll never know whether or not you're going north, south, east, or west. I like knowing which direction I'm headed, and it actually helps give me a better idea of the layout of where the streets are because the map is staying in the same place.
All right, so the next one I've got on the list. This has nothing.
Your mic is out, James. I think you
there we go.
Off, yeah.
All right, this has nothing to do with electricity, but like the collapse of the Atlantic Meridian Oscillate Overturning Current, or AMOC. You know anything about this one?
The Atlantic what?
Meridional Overturning Current.
Okay, hang on. The Atlantic Meridian Overturning Current.
It's basically what takes all the warm water from like the Gulf and the South Atlantic, and it goes north and east across the Atlantic and kind of like ends around the UK.
Okay, and I'm guessing that has something to do with the cold water coming down.
The cold water,
because cold water is more dense, so it's going to kind of.
This, you've got all this warm water that's getting shuttled across the Atlantic, and as it goes across the Atlantic, it gradually cools, and eventually it sinks somewhere north of like Ireland, and then it drops down to the bottom of the ocean and starts coming back to the west and kind of goes down like along the coast of like Maine eventually. But the reason why like the UK has a relatively mild climate is because it's got all this warm water off the coast. And so like if you look at London, do you know how far north London is?
Isn't it? It's got to be similar to like Boston-y, New York area.
No. You know what New York is closest to? So do you know what New York is about closest to in terms of north-south in Europe?
No idea.
Madrid.
I should know this. Oh, yeah?
Yeah, New York is about even with Madrid. You know what London is even with?
Maine.
Calgary.
Wow. Interesting.
It's that far north. So, like, the reason why
but it's warm because it's similar temperature to New York because it has the warm water, which is warming the region.
Yeah, so there's considerable concern in the scientific community that like the AMOC is like slowing down and might eventually collapse, which means that this treadmill of warm water keeping England and Ireland and Scotland relatively warm considering how far north they are.
Yeah.
Because like London's farther north than Montreal by a good bit. But it's way warmer than Montreal, as anybody in London or Montreal will tell you. And so imagine that like this ocean heating effect goes away. Like London is now is now as cold as Calgary.
Yeah, that would be be wild. Is there a timeline for this theory?
The earliest I've seen is like they're afraid that it could collapse as early as 2045.
Wow. We've talked about like the jet stream changing, right? We've talked about that.
Well, yeah, that's
before.
A little bit, but like if you were to have this, you would have basically all of the agriculture in Western and Northern Europe collapse because like you'd have a much longer cold season and a much shorter warm season, and like you might have a whole bunch of crops that just get frozen over and completely obliterated.
Well, on top of plants and agriculture, you also have the animals. Right.
Well, yeah, you'd also have mass migrations of fish and stuff like that because they live in certain temperature waters. So, like,
you can no longer
have
fishery
collapse.
Yeah.
And also, like, shipping would be affected because, like, you could have sea ice come down as far as London or further south. So now, like, you can't ship to the UK for 3 or 4 months out of the year.
Wow.
And there's lots of more consequences because it would also affect like the climate on especially the east coast of the United States. There would be, I think, a lot more rain on the East Coast, but like that's one where like it would be like the current would slow down and then eventually stop. So like this would all happen slowly, but like eventually the effects would get really really bad.
What else? What else? Oh, you know what? We got to hit this bar trivia, actually, from last week. Did I think I gave you this question. So bar trivia from not last week, but
Three pills.
last episode. The three pills. A doctor gives you three pills and tells you to take one pill every half hour. How long will these pills last?
Una hora.
They will last 1 hour. You take one to start. You start the timer. You got two more to take, which is only 2.5 hours away, which is 1 hour. So the pills last 1 hour. I think that was a pretty easy one. That was a fun one. It was a fun one if you know somebody who got it wrong. Actually,
Yeah.
we'll have a new bar trivia question at the end of this episode. Make sure you visit SipTalkPodcast.com. Answer the bar trivia question. We'll send you some cool Sip Talk merch. SipTalkPodcast.com. Go ahead, James.
All right. So the next one I've got, and I'm going out of order here, but just like demographic collapse.
Explain.
So you're already seeing this. We're seeing the beginnings of this in places like South Korea and Japan, and to a lesser degree China. But like when you have very few young people and lots of old people, you have tons of societal problems, mostly economic.
Yeah, well, we've talked about population decline and things like this before, but yeah, generally the younger population are the people that are paying into Social Security and basically they're financially taking care of the older population.
Well,
They're
and
also the labor market.
Well, also physically taking care of the older people is if you've got a ton of old people and not many people to take care of them, like forget about just the money part of it. Like you're just not going to have enough people to support the old people.
Yeah, and you said we're seeing it where? Japan,
South Korea and Japan are probably the worldwide leaders in this right now.
Yeah, I wonder how that affects like housing supply and things like that. Because I foresee that happening in the U.S. Our population is starting to level off in the United States, and we're talking about building, but I think it's going to affect a lot of industries.
Well, you also, if it gets severe enough, you're just not going to have a labor force to produce enough food for everybody that's still alive in the country. You're not going to have them to produce any of the other things that the population just needs.
Well, pretty much when
You're not gonna
everybody's
have
in,
people to work in factories or farms or stores.
but once we get everybody into virtual reality and plugged in, then we can have the robots do all this work and just feed us through tubes, right into our bellies, right?
Yeah, and then we can also just use our heat to provide electricity for the robots.
Yeah, which is kind of a flaw in that storyline. I don't necessarily know that humans produce more energy than they require.
No. The robots would have been better just taking that food and just burning it.
Yeah, but whatever. All right, what else we got here?
It was still a cool movie.
It was a great movie, and we're heading in that direction. It just may not play out exactly like that. Which I don't know if you skipped a page on our notes here. If you skipped a page like 4 or 5, I think I've got 3 additional kind of high probability, moderate probability, and low probability, and one of these has AI basically taking over as an option. So, that's actually low probability existential scale catastrophes. A super intelligent system recursively improves and begins to optimize for goals misaligned with human flourishing, disrupting essential systems and monopolizing resources.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I think it would be wild. I think it's very improbable, but it's something that I spend a decent amount of energy thinking about and listening to podcasts.
I think it would be easy enough to just nuke the data center if we really had to.
Who controls the nukes?
There's still enough dumb nukes.
Not true.
Seriously, like there's plenty of nukes out there
All
where
of the
they're still
ones.
controlled by like
two people
Like,
turning keys
yeah,
simultaneously.
but no, I'm talking about the bombs themselves are going to be controlled by electromechanical switches, where it's you get it, you load it into a plane, and you flip a bunch of toggles to arm it, and like there's no radio control, there's no computer chips or anything else. It's flip it to arm, and one of the arming settings is basically an altimeter that's built into it. Once it triggers the altimeter below a certain altitude, it just detonates.
What else you got on your list here?
All right, so we did demographic collapse. Um, yo, the COVID education gap.
The COVID education gap. What?
So think about the generation of kids that had
Oh,
2,
okay.
3, 4, 5 years where they effectively had no school.
I don't think it was necessarily 5, but I
I,
think
I, I
I
mean,
think the it has carried up to about 5 years. The ripple effects.
where kids just didn't go to school, didn't build socialization skills, and they're just 2 or 3 years behind where any other kid would be. And all the schools that are responsible for these kids can't just say, you know what, you're going to be in school for 2 or 3 more years. They still push them on.
They have to, yeah.
So you're going to have someone that is entering college that is effectively on par with a 15-year-old entering college, and you've got somebody exiting college that's effectively on the same level as someone who would normally be entering college, and these people are going to go to work with
Well,
no
also, like
skills.
they're gonna be dealing with like the daily stress of life, and they're gonna be so ill prepared. Socializing, building relationships, not just romantic ones with friends, is all stressful.
Yeah.
And people already are so poorly equipped with to just deal with the general stress of life. And colleges also have been like what's the word I'm looking for? They haven't been good for people in this respect. People who are very stressed, the colleges just lean into that. And they're like, you shouldn't have any stress at all. Come here, take a nap over here. Here's our crying pod. You can cry
Well,
in the corner. And that's not
yes and no, because colleges will also if you're failing in college, the college will reach out to you to a point, but
oh
no,
good.
the
Then you just
intervention that you get in high school, if you're failing a class or two in high school, you have multiple people every day talking, harassing you about your grades and your homework and stuff like that. In college, that doesn't exist. It might exist for your first semester, but they're going to reach out to you and be like, yeah, you failed 3 classes last semester, you need to get your GPA up, and if you don't do it next semester, they're just like, all right, see ya. There's help available to you if you want it, but it's not forced on you like it is in high school.
Yeah, no, you're like it's a lot easier to just completely fail at college. I was just talking about
I had multiple friends that I went to school with that didn't do what they needed to do and failed out of college.
and
And
there's
it
nobody
wasn't because
pushing.
they were stupid. It was because they didn't do the work,
Yeah.
which you can say is a version of stupid, but that's a
Uh,
different kind of stupid than they weren't intellectually capable of doing the
well,
work.
I was
They
talking
were.
going to college to have this stressful situation, all these new scenarios, and that not happening because you're surrounded by a bunch of kind of poorly adapted idiots, who are 18, 19, and 20 years old, but have
Well,
the maturity level of a 13 or 14-year-old.
yeah, and there's also, and this is more recent, but with the prevalence of AI, now students don't even really have to do the work. And last summer, I was having a conversation with a former professor of mine, and I asked her what kind of challenges this is presenting to her, and she's like, I could read a paper and know if it's AI. I was like, do you fail them? And she's like, it honestly, it isn't really worth the fight.
Well, so here's the thing: is you can now write papers with AI and then grade papers with AI. So like who's learning anything, and what's the feedback on the not learning? I
Well,
think there's going to be a value in the authenticity of like just not every I don't know, like an AI written paper to me is total bullshit. I would rather read through somebody's spelling errors and like grammatical issues and just like considerably more poorly written than read an AI article or paper of any type.
Well, what she said she was going to have to start doing is kind of flip the traditional approach that that she had taken, which is before, like I took a number of classes with her, and the traditional approach is, okay, go home, do some of the reading. Most days in class, we're just going to talk about the reading. I'm going to answer your questions, and I'm going to propose questions to you so that we can think about whatever this person that we were reading said, right? And then every so often, I'm going to have you write a paper on a topic I suggest. And maybe a little bit less often, we take like an actual test. And she's like, I'm going to have to flip that. Where like most of the classes are going to have to be me doing assessment because they can't use AI when they're in the classroom with me.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it is taking over a lot of what people are producing, and I'm really sick of reading. Like I see a ton of resumes, I see a ton of real estate ads that are so clearly written with AI. Like it's I don't know. I'm overseeing like job ads and resumes and just all this AI created bullshit. Um, but let's get away from AI. Let's go somewhere else on your list now.
This is one where we don't fully understand the consequences of it yet, but microplastic accumulation in humans.
Yeah, it is it is wild. Do you know about Teflon? You know, like all about Teflon and how terrible it is.
Well, that you're talking about like the fluorinated carbon chains.
Yeah, yeah. So all these kind of microchemicals. I mean, all chemicals are micro, but all these microplastics and all these chemicals that we just haven't been paying any attention to are now in our food, like all over our bodies. I think we're going to see a big uptick in like dementia and things like that.
Kidney disease.
Yeah, because there's all these.
Well, and also, and you're already seeing this, and like it's really weird for me to be taking this position as someone who doesn't want to have kids, but like you're seeing male sperm counts across the globe plummeting right now, and like a big factor to blame, at least thought to be to blame, is these forever chemicals and microplastics.
I was going to mention sperm count as well because that's one of the theories that is driving the lower sperm count is microplastics.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know too much about it except that it is a real problem. You know, like
Well, the problem is that it hasn't been thoroughly studied yet, and it's difficult to do because there's a lot of a noise to the signal.
well, yeah, plastics and other chemicals that like I mean I have it's kind of like salt. Everybody says how salt is bad and sodium is bad, and I'm like, well, look at the people who have the highest sodium intake and what types of foods have the highest sodium intake. Now, if I'm eating a salad with some olive oil and vinaigrette or just olive oil on it, and I'm eating some vegetables and I put a decent amount of salt on it, I don't think it's that bad. Now,
Well, chances are the amount of salt that you put on that salad or whatever is way less than like the amount of salt that's hidden in processed foods.
exactly, and it's the processed foods, it's the McDonald's, it's all the bullshit that have these crazy high sodium levels that people are ingesting these things. And then, and what I'm thinking is, yeah, there's a lot of noise there in the sense that it's not just the sodium, it's all the other shit that comes along with high sodium diets. So, you know, we're talking about microplastics.
So that's not to say that sodium, like having high sodium, is a good thing because it isn't.
I'm not saying it is. I'm just like, I like table salt. And the other night,
I know you do.
I cut up a watermelon. I'm putting salt on the watermelon.
You know what's good on watermelon?
Lime.
Balsamic vinegar.
No, really?
A little bit, like a drizzle.
I would. Oh, you know what? I've probably had like a salad with watermelon, feta cheese, some arugula, and probably like a balsamic glaze or something over the top of it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like you can make like a cucumber watermelon salad with like mint and onion and lime.
That sounds good to me.
It is.
Listening to
really
it, like, that sounds terrible. I think it sounds good.
Oh yeah, and then you just like goat cheese on top of it.
Let me hit just this bar trivia question for today's episode, and then we can talk about fish real quick. I know we touched on fish, but I think that would be a good one to touch on.
Yeah.
All right. Bar trivia episode 272. Picture a ship at anchor. Over the side hangs a rope ladder with half meter rungs. Okay, so between the the rungs is a half meter. The tide rises a half meter per hour. So the space between the steps in the ladder are a half meter, and the tide rises a half meter per hour. At the end of 5 hours, how much of the ladder will remain above, assuming that 9 rungs were above the water when the tide began to rise? Okay, so you got a boat, got a ladder hanging out. You can see 9 rungs on the ladder, a half meter between each one. After 5 hours, the tide goes up a half meter per hour. After 5 hours, how many rungs can you see on that ladder?
I know.
All right, we'll give you that answer in episode 273. Let's talk about fish, James.
Yeah, since we're talking about boats, there's considerable risk of like various fisheries across the planet just collapsing from overfishing. Because you need to have some fish left over after you fish to make more fish next time.
Would it be fisheries that are collapsing, or would it be like entire ecosystems of like different parts of the ocean?
Well, I mean, yes, because if all the fish go away, that's a crucial piece in just the larger food web of the ocean.
So you know what I've heard proposed as a solution to this is having protected areas that are designated no fishing zones. Um, and where we basically do everything we can to create a very habitable environment for mating and for fish to live in. And then of course the fish will leave this area, right? Some will come back, but you can fish them outside of the area.
So there are two problems with that idea.
And I've heard again that it doesn't work, and I'm curious what you got.
Well, the first problem is enforcement, because the ocean is really, really big. And in order to have a no fishing zone large enough to have any effect, it would have to be huge. And the manpower that you would need to employ to enforce, like, not allowing fishing ships in there would be probably prohibitively expensive. The second is that the ocean is incredibly diverse, and depending on where you go, like, some fish only live in certain areas. So, like, would you have like basically small little areas in each one of these microclimates in the ocean for like certain fish or whatever? Because like you could just say like, all right, we're going to make one big area here, but that might only cover like 10% of the fish species.
Yeah, well, I actually I have not heard if this is being practiced or not. I heard basically the theory, and then I heard somebody else shitting on the theory saying it's been proven not to work, but there was no real fact behind either one.
Well, the other problem is like fishing is regulated right now, but you have all sorts of illegal fishing going on where like if you were to just get rid of the illegal fishing, this problem would almost entirely go away. It's the illegal fishing that is very difficult to enforce against that is killing all these fish populations. And I say this as someone who doesn't eat seafood.
Yeah, definitely illegal fishing being a major issue, but yeah, fish population caused by overfishing or caused by an event like the AMOC,
Or ocean acidification and like coral bleaching and stuff like that from like extra carbon dioxide being dissolved into seawater. Did you know that seawater, the pH is basic?
I did not know that.
The ocean is basic, not acidic.
Interesting. One other note on the ocean that we didn't talk about was the tides rising, the sea level rising, and then basically the flooding of the shores and the salinification of crops and things that are located close to the shores.
Yeah, this is my long-term plan to own beachfront property.
What's that?
This is part of my long-term plan to own beachfront property.
Is what? Wait for the tides to rise and just your house will soon be on the water. All right, we got about 30 seconds left. Anything you'd like to add in our last 30 seconds here about disasters that could ruin humanity here?
The last one I have, and this deserves much more than 30 seconds, but and this is another global phenomenon, is just political polarization and disinformation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is I wasn't that far away when I said that.
No, you weren't.
All right. So this has been episode 272 of SipTalk. Visit SipTalkPodcast.com. Buy us a drink. We'll see you next time. Thank you for visiting. Adios.